My topic of research this year extends from last year's research, which looked about how organisations evolve due to the economic cycles which occur in industry. And one of the characteristics that we picked up last year was the use of open as a competitive weapon between companies. So this year we focused in on that particular issue and looked at how companies are using open to compete with others. The first thing when looking at such a subject, you have to define what is open and openness. And now, open we normally associate with things like open source, and that's a huge industry, but also a massively unaccounted for industry. So if you look at something like a project like Apache web server, which is an open project, there's direct revenue associated with it, but a huger amount of revenue which isn't accounted for because people are building on top of that component. But it's not just open source in terms of software. You've also got things like open hardware, open data, open practices, open processes. It's quite a widespread meme. It's not isolated to a single thing. One of the surprising results from the research was that the determinant of success didn't seem to be whether companies used open or not. Because all companies had an open process. A stronger determinant of success was the level of which they thought strategically about IT. And by that I mean they examined their value chain and the components within it, the state of evolution of those components, and they used open as a way of manipulating that value chain. Now, generally the population broke down into 4 different groups. There were 2 extremes. The players who have done very well over the last 5 years, who thought strategically about IT and used open as a means of competing, and then the chancers who are at the opposite end, who neither thought strategically about IT nor used open as a means of competing. And over the last 5 years, they've generally done pretty poorly. When it comes to the future, a company has a number of choices. I mean, the first, if you're one of those chancers, your choice is, do we adopt a more open approach, or do we start strategically thinking about IT? Probably the right route is to start thinking strategically about IT, and then as you go through that process, then to start using open as a means of competing. Certainly within the software industry and now increasing the retail industry and spreading into other industries, including eventually manufacturing through things like 3D printing, that process of thinking about strategically about your value chain, the components, and using openness as a means of manipulating to your favor will become increasingly more important.